and welcome to the WAM Theatre Spotlight series. In this series, WAM invites audiences into conversations with some of our season's groundbreaking theatre artists to learn about their process and how their work intersects with activism. I'm Talya Kingston. I'm WAM's Associate Artistic Director. And today I'll be talking with Megan Sandberg Zakian, who is a director, a cultural consultant, and a new WAM board member. So we're very excited about that, and is the director of our Fresh Takes reading of the new Galileos. And we're going to talk about her work as a director and also about a book that she has written that I'm excited to share with you all. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude and humility that WAM Theatre is based on the ancestral homelands of the Mohican people, who are the indigenous people of this land. Despite tremendous hardship in being forced from here, today their community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Munsee community. We pay honour and respect to their ancestors past and present as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. And I invite you to check out the land acknowledgement page on our website and join us in some of the action steps that we're taking. So with that, I wanted to just welcome you, Megan, and to start by asking you just about your work as a storyteller, perhaps when you first knew you were a storyteller, what kind of stories you're attracted to.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to be doing all those things that you said in your introduction, to be directing the Fresh Takes reading of Amy Berryman's amazing play and to get to be part of the board of WAM. So I'm very happy to be wearing all of those hats. I mean, if you ask anyone in my family about how I first knew I was a storyteller, they could tell you lots of extremely embarrassing stories that I will not repeat about, giant pageants that happened in my living room. Typically I'm a director of new plays, and I really, when I'm getting excited about a project, it's usually because the writer is excited about it, that the writer is excited often about telling a story that feels incredibly necessary to them and also feels difficult to tell, feels challenging in some way, feels like there's something to unearth. And often I get really drawn to working with writers who feel like they're having to expend a lot of effort to reveal or unearth a narrative that's been buried or silenced or invisibilized in some kind of way. And it's really an honor to be part of their work to bring those stories into our view in this moment. So I think that's the kind of energy that I often get excited about. I'm pretty playwright centered. So if I'm excited about the playwright and what they're excited about, I'm likely to be really moved by the project that they're working on.
And just before we get to your book, I'd love to then know what excites you about the new Galileos.
Oh my gosh. Well, the new Galileos is just exactly the kind of play that I am drawn to for some of the reasons I just mentioned in terms of, the play is literally about trying to resist the silencing of voices and of truths. In the play, there are three female climate scientists who are having to decide to varying degrees what kind of cost they're willing to accept to speak their truth into the world. And so I find that premise exciting as a human being, and also as the daughter of a molecular biologist. And also I would say my mom is an activist too. The story rings really true to me. And beyond that, I think I'm really, I'm a big fan, like many of us are, of Octavia Butler. I love stories that feel these sort of, speculative fiction stories or sort of something that might be science fiction, but really is on the edge of prophecy, and especially when it involves women or queer people or people of color. I'm always very interested in that work that feels like it's speaking to what our imagined futures might be. And this play definitely does that. Although I actually just got off the phone with Amy, and she was saying that the play has gotten, like, almost everything in the play that felt speculative when she wrote it actually happened. And so she feels like she has an interesting, some interesting choices to make in revising it.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. The play was written during Trump's presidency, so
Yeah.
that would make sense. So I've been, as you know, I've been dying to talk to you about your book. There Must Be Happy Endings on a Theatre of Optimism and Honesty. You know, I'm a fan. This is my very dog-eared copy. For people who haven't had the opportunity to read it yet, how would you describe the book? And could you just, I know you have a little extract. I'd love you to read it to us so that we can get a taste of it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for being a reader and a fan.
A fan, Megan.
It's so, well, first of all, it's obviously incredibly moving to me that you in particular are a fan, because I believe so much in the work that you're doing. But also, every time I hear from readers, it feels like just such an incredible gift when that, you put something out into the world and you don't, it's not like theater, you can't tell whether people are receiving it. It feels like the sort of collective breath of an audience when someone reaches out and says, I read your book and this is what I think. I love it. I love that. The book is 10 essays. I call it an artistic coming of age story, on the ethics of making hopeful art in an unjust world. And it was written, it actually was published in March of 2020. And so the book release was in March 2020, which was like my first of many Zoom events during that period. But so it wasn't conceived during as a pandemic project, but certainly the question of how do we hold optimism and hope alongside truth and honesty has become even more resonant. And yeah, let me read this. Oh, I took my bookmark out, but I think I can find it again. Let me read this paragraph, which I think does a good job of outlining some of the questions that the book asks. This is from the introduction. And still I wonder, how do I reconcile my desire for hope and possibility, connection and transformation, with an authentic witnessing of darkness and despair, hate and violence? In the face of an enormously unjust and chaotic history and present, is it acceptable? Is it ethical to believe in the happy ending? Is it possible to be both honest and hopeful? Although I write from the viewpoint of someone making theater, I believe that this balancing act is one that all sensitive human beings must at some point attend to. It is the essential question of how to, as Walter Lippmann wrote, live forward in the midst of complexity.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful. I would love to talk about endings to plays, and particularly activist plays. As you know, WAM Theatre intersects arts and activism. And before I started working at WAM, I was teaching theatre for social change. And I always taught that for plays that deal with activism, you want to leave your audience in a place of slight discomfort so that they're motivated to make change in the world, not rather than taking them all the way through catharsis to a place of like a soft landing at the end. And when I arrived at WAM, one of the things that WAM plays historically do is leave a note of hope at the end. And so often when I'm reading plays for WAM, I'm like, how can I do both? Like, how can I leave plays that both give hope, don't leave people in a pit of despair, but also at the same time motivate the change and allow people to feel lifted. So I'm wondering if you have any insight into that and where you would like to leave your audiences, and if you can give us an example from an ending that, yeah.
Yeah, what a great question. I mean, I think this is the negotiation that you're describing is really a foundational piece of theater making for me. I think that I'm definitely drawn to plays that activate that question and where you have to really wrestle with it. I don't think there's a particularly satisfying answer, but I will say that some of the ways that I've thought about it are an experience that I had, and that really the book traces the evolution. The book traces the evolution of my um, willingness to really sit with and have a really honest encounter with difficult subject matter, and and the darker, thornier, more painful parts of stories, and and by an honest encounter with that material, I mean an encounter that doesn't have an agenda beyond like really seeing and hearing and being present with pain or loss or grief or violence or injustice. You know, that that there is not a kind of colonial mentality of, you know, I'm coming into this hard thing in order to fix it. You know, that's not the intention of the storyteller, the intention of the artist, but the intention is actually to just really see and hear it and allow it to be seen and heard. And that's, I mean, it sounds, you know, I'm like rolls tripping me off the tongue, but it's been a difficult journey for me. I was raised by an optimistic, you know, my molecular biologist mother, but you know, she's very much glass half full, and I was raised to see the world that way, for better or for worse. And I think the book negotiates with both, with the ways in which that perspective was for worse, that and that I need to resist, and the ways in which that perspective is a real gift and I can lean into. So I would say that my journey was one of revelation. That when I actually sat in deep communion with the things that were painful and hard, suddenly the space for joy and hope opened up in a way that I had not anticipated. That actually the possibilities for sort of redemptive feeling in a work of art that have an exponential relationship to how authentic your encounter is with the harder things, at least for me. That was my experience. So I now have a lot more, my muscles have been built around sitting with difficult things, and I don't feel the need to, in the book, I use the metaphor of throwing gold glitter. I don't feel the need to throw gold glitter all over everything all the time. In my thinking, in my writing, in my staging, or even in like my conversations with playwrights, or with producers, you know. So I think that for me is the biggest learning. And then in terms of endings that I like or can talk about, I mean, the ending that there's an ending that's like very much on my mind right now, that I write about in the book, which is the ending of Good Person of Szechuan by Bertolt Brecht. And I'm thinking about it because I'm teaching Brecht right now, and I'm thinking about the fact that, so in the end of the play has a sort of double ending. It has an ending within the narrative where like something incredibly devastating happens, that the gods essentially abandon the earth, leaving us poor human beings in this space of like, how can I possibly both be a good person and eat and put a roof over my head? They're like, see ya, we're not going to solve that problem for you. And we're sort of left in this space of desperation and devastation. And then there's a coda, which is a little epilogue, like a poetic text epilogue, where the company comes and talks to the audience and is like, so what do you think? Like, what would be a happy ending? What kind of approaches can you come up with? And which is actually, this is where the title of the book comes from. You know, tell us what you would recommend to help good people to a happy end. And I think that my theory my theory is that if you actually sit with the awfulness of the first ending, if you're actually really present with how just completely devastating that is, and then there is open-heartedness and connection and interest and curiosity on the part of the company that approaches the audience and says, that wasn't that was one version of the truth that we just saw. Um, but like, what other versions are there? You know, and what do you think that we can do? To me, there's something so spacious and beautiful and sort of like affirming about that. I love it. I haven't, I've only staged it once. I definitely did not get it right. And I don't know that I've felt that in any of the other stagings that I've seen, which is what the chapter is about, but I still really believe in that ending. And I also, I mean, I was just talking to Amy about how her play's ending feels Brechtian, the new Galileos, the ending feels Brechtian, and it feels, the play to me feels the Brecht has a Galileo play, and I kept thinking about that play, um, you know, working on her play because because the story of Galileo is so much a story of how do we think about uh, you know, like how much is the measure of the kind of hope that is generated by our existence measured in our ending, you know, or in our and I think that the ending of the new Galileos hopefully also has that kind of double um, impact to it, where there's a feeling of we're looking really closely at what's devastating, and we're also generating a sense of possibility about what else could be an alternative to this devastation.
Yeah, it's great. So it's like allowing the audience to rehearse different endings and rehearse different things for real life. Excellent. Yeah, thank you. Um, I'm just wondering, finally, before I let you go on with your life, um, how, in what other ways your artistry intersects with activism? What are other ways that you've found to infuse your art with activism you can share with us?
I have a consulting group called Maya Directors that is made up of 4 Middle Eastern directors, and or actually 3, because we shifted a little bit in terms of our mission. So we're 3 Middle Eastern directors now, and we've done a number of things over the years: cultural consulting, support with casting for projects, and now we've actually shifted into a space of being more interested solely in advocacy and in generative projects that involve artists of Manasa descent from the very beginning of the project. So that's the work of thinking about what kind of work we want to do to support the community of Middle Eastern and Manasa, Middle Eastern, North African, and South Asian artists has been a really rich site of activism for me. Uh, and then I also I work, when I'm not directing plays, I work with ALJP, which is a search firm, BIPOC led, entirely BIPOC led search firm that is leading searches in the American theater. So, you know, identifying who the next artistic leaders are, the next managing leaders are, and executive leaders are of arts organizations across the country. And I find a lot of pleasure and joy and purpose in seeing the kind of activist leaders that we have coming up in this field, you know, and really getting to be part of supporting those folks through these searches and helping them to articulate their visions to boards and to search committees, and really just constantly being inspired by the kinds of leadership visions that are out there, and thinking about how can I, as an artist, continue to support the change that the folks who are running organizations are shaping, which I do think we're in the middle of that change. And I think artists have a responsibility not only to resist and to agitate and to keep pushing for change, but also to look at our role in supporting the change, the structural change, which is often incremental and often not happening the way that we want it to, that's happening in organizations, which is one of the reasons that I joined the WAM board, because I definitely have a sense of what is my service to the field on a more institutional level. So that's a place where I feel really inspired as well.
That's fantastic. Well, we're really glad to have you on our board, as I'm sure you're aware. So how can people get hold of the book?
Oh, well, the best way to get it is directly from the Third Thing Press. You can just Google the Third Thing Press. I think it's the third thing with a three, dot press. Or you can ask your local bookstore to order it. It's great if you are affiliated with an academic institution or you have a local library to ask the library to stock it, to have it available. It's available in an ebook as well. You can get it from Amazon. Authors and the small independent press that publishes it do not receive too much remuneration when you do. But if that's your jam, go for it. I'm a fan of bookshop.org, which supports independent bookstores. But the best way is really straight from the press, because their independent presses are the stars, the heroes of getting this work out into the world. And the Third Thing is incredible. And while folks are there, I encourage them to look at the other titles published by the Third Thing as well, which are also really stunning.
Great. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I look forward to more conversations with you as the season progresses.
Likewise, thank you, Talya.